Dan and Amy, so of the 70 million Catholics who voted in the presidential election, they split for Donald Trump 52-45. That message lost on Pope Francis and Chicago Archbishop, now Cardinal Blaise Cupich. Cupich elevated this weekend. Pope Francis said Saturday that, quote, an epidemic of animosity, unquote, against people of other races or religions was hurting the weakest in society, striking a note of caution against the rise of populism and nationalism. An enemy because they come from a distant country or have different customs, an enemy because of the color of their skin, their language, or social class, an enemy because they think differently or even have a different faith, said Pope Francis. No, that's not it, Your Holiness. That's not it. It's only an enemy if you sexually assault women, like in Cologne, Germany. It's only an enemy if you come to the West to shoot up a nightclub or to blow up a facility, to kill civilians in the name of religion, to try and impose as a political governance system a religion. That's the issue, just so we're clear. But what does the elevation of Blaise Cupich signal about the direction of the Catholic Church? Kind of important, not just for Chicago, but in general. It's, in my opinion, it's rather sad that you have such an intellectual lightweight and Cupich follow such an intellectual heavyweight in Cardinal George. But let's get a more informed opinion than mine. He is John Allen. He is the editor of Crux, a outlet specializing in the coverage of the Vatican and the Catholic Church. John, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure, Dan. I'm even glad to be with you.
So, Pope Francis has now named 44 of the 120 cardinals allowed by the Church. That's pretty significant. What does the elevation of Cupich, along with the other choices the Pope has made, signal about the direction of the Catholic Church?
Well, in this consistory, which is the technical term for the event in which new cardinals are inducted into the club, there were 17 guys from around the world. I think the first blindingly obvious point is that the Pope is trying to internationalize and globalize the college. I mean, this time you had new cardinals from Mauritius, from Papua New Guinea, from Bangladesh, just every point of the compass. This is a Pope who is very passionate about what he calls the peripheries, that is, the kind of forgotten and overlooked corners of the world. So clearly this is becoming a much more global body that and therefore, arguably, I suppose, better represents the experiences and the outlooks of the 1.2 billion Catholics all over the world. I mean, you find that...
Well, just hold on 1 second there. So if he's so concerned about the margins and the peripheries, as you say, and as he said, then his choices from the U.S. were all white men in their 60s. He passed over Wilton Gregory, the African-American Archbishop of Atlanta. He passed over Gustavo Garcia Siller, the Mexican-born Archbishop of San Antonio. Why?
Well, and you could easily throw in there Jose Gomez, the Mexican-born Archbishop of Los Angeles, who a lot of people thought was the most obvious choice for a new cardinal in America. I don't know the answer to that, except that, and this was going to be my second point, it is also clear that Pope Francis is trying to shift the balance of power in the American Bishops' Conference. Bear in mind, he had consistories in 2014 and 2015. He didn't name any new Americans. So this is the first time he's named Americans. This time there are 3 of them. And all 3 of them, Blaise Cupich of Chicago, Joseph Tobin, formerly of Indianapolis, now of Newark, and Kevin Farrell from Dallas, who now has a new Vatican job. All 3 of these guys would be seen as sort of center-left progressives. And quite clearly, therefore, the Pope is trying to put that kind of person in positions of responsibility in the American church.
So central-left progressives, obviously, conservative Catholics, such as Dan Prof, don't like that about Cupich. What has he done in particular that upsets conservative Catholics?
Well, yes. as have many other things about this Pope. But, I mean, I suppose if you wanted to take a historical perspective on this, you would say that the Catholic Church was under center-left progressive management for about 20 years with John the 23rd and Paul the VI. It was then under center-right, more conservative management for more than 30 years with John Paul II and Benedict XVI. So maybe it's the other side's turn. But, however you choose to look at that, I think it is a plain fact that the kind of people that this Pope is elevating in the American church are a break with what has been the more conservative leadership of the American Conference for quite some time.
Yeah, and I mean, just sticking to Chicago here and now Cardinal Cupich, he's done some interesting things in his short time here, including eliminating the Respect Life office, which was seen as kind of a national model. Seems like Cupich in particular, and maybe he is taking cues from the Vatican, I don't know, wants to talk more about labor economics and climatology than he does about marriage and life and, the catechism.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Blase Cupich, who I've known for a long time, is unquestionably pro-life. Let's be clear on that. But you are right to notice a shift in emphasis. I think under Cardinal Francis George, who I also knew very well, in fact, I think I had the last interview with him before he died, Cardinal George was very much a man who would say that while all of the Church's social teaching is important, in the present social context in the United States, you have to give priority to the life issues, that is, the struggle against abortion, the struggle against euthanasia, the struggle against the contraception mandates imposed by the Obama administration, because those are the burning issues in this culture. I think Cardinal Cupich is much more reminiscent, to invoke another Chicago name, the late Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, who had this idea of a consistent ethic of life, so that while we're concerned with abortion, we are also concerned with war and peace, with poverty, with race relations, with the environment, and a number of other things, and that they all kind of deserve equal emphasis. And listen, I mean, different Catholics will have different ideas about which one of those approaches is right, but I think descriptively it is a fact that whereas Cardinal George was much more the kind of cultural warrior figure, Cardinal Cupich is much more the consistent ethic of life, Bernardine-style kind of figure.
Do you think that the Catholic Church is leaning more central left to get more parishioners or try to attract more people to the Catholic Church?
Sometimes I wish the Catholic Church was that, savvy about things, thinking in terms of marketing strategy. I really don't think that's what's going on here. What I think is going on is that every pope, the Catholic Church is in some ways a very top-down system, and therefore whoever the Pope is matters. He sets a tone for absolutely everything else. And this is a Pope, the first Latin American Pope in history, the first Pope from the developing world, the first Jesuit Pope, and he's bringing that background with him to the office. And in American terms, that translates into a more kind of center-left, populist sort of agenda. And that's very natural to this Pope, and it's who he is. It's a bit of a shock to the system, it has to be said, in the American context, where over the last 30-plus years, we've become much more accustomed to our bishops in big-picture terms being fairly reliably conservative. And obviously, in the Pope Francis era, that's simply not the case anymore.
Yeah, and it seems to me that what we have increasingly is politicians masquerading as church elders. And with the church stands for nothing, it actually will repel parishioners, and it's repelling me right now and a lot of other conservative Catholics. I'll still attend Mass and believe in the tenets of the Catechism. But in terms of listening to Blase Cupich lecture me about a $15 minimum wage, not exactly in his lane. And I got to say, too, the result is a deterioration of Catholic education as well, where you don't have the moral clarity on, for example, school choice and making that a preeminent issue if you want to wade into the public policy arena. And you have the adoption of Common Core and other kind of secularized big government ideas about K through 12 education. And so it seems to me you have terrible leadership at a lot of Catholic universities that seem particularly opposed to Catholicism these days, like Notre Dame with Jenkins and Hofschmidt at DePaul. I know he's outgoing. And now that's kind of weaning its way down to the K through 12 level as well. And I don't hold a particularly sanguine view of where this all ends.
Well, I mean, look, Dan, the plain fact of the matter is that a lot of liberal Catholics would have said pretty much exactly the same thing about the governance they perceived during the John Paul and Benedict XVI years. I think one of the issues here for a lot of Catholics in thinking about all of this is, where do you start? Do you start with your faith and then try to think your way through the political issues, or do you start with your political agenda and try to make the faith fit that?
The former.
That's a challenge for everybody all of the time. I think right now it may be in the States a little bit more of a challenge for more conservative Catholics, because simply the winds in Rome are not blowing in their direction.
Yeah. All right. Very good. John Allen, editor of Crux, specializing in coverage of the Vatican and the Catholic Church. John, thanks for joining us. Very good discussion. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan and Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.